Okay, welcome to the Energy Insider, which is I am Jack Doueck, your host. This is the first episode of the Energy Marketing Conference's new podcast. This podcast, the goal of our podcast will be to deliver unfiltered insights from CEOs, from innovators, and from leaders driving the US retail energy industry and energy revolution. We're going to hear how successful firms navigate disruption, regulation, innovation, and opportunity in the U.S. retail energy markets. And for our first episode, I am thrilled and honored to have Mr. Deryl Brown, who is the chairman of Atlantic Energy, as my guest on the show. Mr. Brown, I met Deryl many, many years ago, more than a decade ago. And I remember the first meeting we had in my office in downtown Brooklyn. And I remember saying to myself when the meeting was over that here is one of the good guys in the retail energy world. This is a person that has spent his career building companies, in some cases selling companies, advising companies, but also doing it with integrity and with really he loves what he does, and it shows in everything he does. And everybody that knows Deryl will say the same thing about Deryl. They'll say, I'll say, what do you think of Deryl Brown? Their answer is always, I love Deryl Brown, because what's not to love? He's been a keynote speaker at multiple energy conferences, and especially EMC has been a huge supporter and sponsor of EMC for years and years. I mean, EMC is now going into its 24th event, two a year for 12 years. Deryl was the one that actually invented the idea of having a CEO roundtable and many other things. But I'll stop talking about Deryl, and because I'm embarrassing him. But Deryl,
Yeah.
welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, my good friend. Thank you very much. Those are flowery words that I am going to have trouble living up to. Uh, Thank you very much. I hope my reputation, can I hire you as a publicist? This would be great. Maybe I could do movies or something. I don't know.
Funny,
Thank you,
funny.
Jack. Nice.
My pleasure. So just tell our audience about your experience in the industry. The companies that you've been involved in and you've built, and maybe your favorite hobby as well.
Well, first off, you don't need to adjust your monitor. I am very old, so I've been around for a long time. So I will give you a quick history. I grew up in the greatest state in the country and the greatest country in the world, and that's the state of Texas. I am a fourth generation Texan, University of Texas electrical engineer. Grew up in small town Paris, Texas. Um, it's been a great life. My parents grew up in the Depression. They wanted me to have a career that was lots of safety in it, and my decision was to go to work for the utility company Texas Power and Light that turned into Texas Utilities and TXU. And I was there for 20 something years. I left in 2001. Uh, and uh, and I always had a entrepreneurial spirit. It was just kind of tamped down when you're in a big utility organization. And my first job outside of that was, we called it the managing director of Direct Energy Business. Direct Energy is a British-born company, so instead of calling us CEOs, they call them managing directors. And we grew that business. And then I left there and essentially started a company called Hudson Energy. I was part of a buying group that bought a small New Jersey-based company. We grew Hudson quite effectively in 4 years, and I'm sure some of my questions I can reference back to this. And sold it to Just Energy, and it is still one of their brands, their non-residential brands to this day, which makes me feel pretty good. I worked then there, starting Hudson Europe in the UK, which is now a shell company, and then became a minority owner and CEO of North American Power up in Connecticut. Grew North American Power over a 3 year period and sold it to Calpine in 2017. and then left there, and I've done some consulting work. I became part of the member of the purchase of Atlantic Energy, which is a really interesting and growth story in itself. And I've advised a number of companies. I work for a company called the Blackstone Group, and have done several roll-up acquisitions in the M&A space in this industry. I love this industry. I love EMC. I feel like I'm at a family reunion when I go there. So many of the people have been part of my organization before, and so I I probably should pay more because I'm just going around getting hearty handshakes and hugs from everybody because they're such long-term great friends of mine.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much. That's a great, really good introduction um, to your to your experience and your expertise that you've had, and I know you're playing it down. So let's jump into a couple of questions I have, and this podcast is only going to be about 30 minutes, but this is going to be a short one. There's another podcast called Acquired, which I recommend everybody to go watch. It's fantastic. It's the stories of these great companies like Microsoft and Intel and IKEA and Mars, the Mars company, and you just pick a company that you want to learn about, and each podcast is about 4 hours. So you just, you got to watch it in multiple sessions while you're driving your car or whatever. But this podcast you could watch, you could listen to or watch on your way to work. 30 minutes should not be too much for anybody. So hopefully this will be great. So let's start with, the subtitle of this podcast, The Energy Insider. The Energy Insider, by the way, is our newsletter that we've been sending out since 2013. Every single month. We have not missed a month in all these years, in more than 12 and a half years. But so this is called The Energy Insider, but the subtitle is Challenges and Opportunities. So let's start with challenges. What are the biggest challenges you're seeing now in the competitive energy industry and market?
Um, yeah, sorry to kind of be an organizer here. Let me put those in two different buckets.
Mhm,
And and there's an overlap in these buckets, but I'll call the first bucket regulatory.
mhm.
And the broadness of that, not just some restrictions that regulatory agencies, but there is a movement that pushes away the retail energy business, pushes against the retail energy business. And I will make an important statement here. The benefactors, the people that benefit from a competitive retail energy market in the electricity and gas space are the customers. Full stop. Full stop. Customers benefit from competitive energy markets. Um, there are so therefore, Daryl, okay, if that's the case, then why isn't the competitive energy markets just being pervasive, just growing significantly? And the answer is because there is a great political, powerful force that would lose if competitive energy markets expand. When you talk about healthcare prices, always talk about big pharma. Well, I've never heard this term, but big utility is very powerful. Utilities are the most politically powerful institutions in America. When I worked for one of those big utilities, we had a mantra that we could walk into the governor's office at any time on any day without an appointment, and he will see us or she will see us.
Wow.
That's the political
Wow.
strength that we felt we had to have. The return, the risk adjusted return on utilities is fantastic. So why would those people give it up if they're doing so well in that space and let competition take over their geographic area? They are dedicated to not doing that. We could do a whole podcast on that. So so I would put the first challenge and the pervasive one is that movement sponsored by big utilities against the competitive markets. I thought of a second one though that's important, and let's call it the maturization or the evolution of the industry itself. People that are entrepreneurs, like I'm kind of a born again entrepreneur, they want to come in and they want to discover something and they want to find something and they want to drive innovation and they want to make it better for the customer and then they want to sell. And Daryl was really lucky because I entered into the industry when it was brand new. And some of the challenges were we didn't have any experience. We couldn't go hire people that could actually run a retail energy business. And as I make a speech at EMC, I said I could take off my shoe and throw it in the crowd and hit more people that have great energy experience than I was able to attract in my first company. So, uh, so uh, the industry has matured significantly, and as we've all predicted, the future of the industry will be four or five or six major players, the NRGs, the TXUs, the Constellations, those guys, and they're the ones that want to buy the small guys now. The problem is they don't want to buy the business, they want to buy just the book. And so those large guys have convinced themselves that their product is really good. Their business processes are good. They don't want to go invest in more systems or different types of interfaces with customers. They're happy with their business models as they are. They just want to go buy the book. So I would say a secondary challenge in the industry today is it's matured to where the five or six really large companies that think they're going to be the future, and they are probably going to be the big future, they are very restrictive on what they will do now. Even if there's somebody that has a better mousetrap, they're happy with theirs. They'll go buy the book and move that book into their less good mousetrap.
I mean, you
So
wouldn't,
those are the two elements that I would put
yeah.
under these challenges in the
Yeah,
industry
I mean
now.
the first element about regulatory pressure and the fact that the utilities are spending tens of millions of dollars fighting against deregulation and restructuring and wanting to maintain the monopolies. And most people don't really understand why that's a big problem. It's really it's just a question of math. In other words, if they get a guaranteed return on sales or on equity. So then the bigger that number becomes, the more money they make. So it's just there's no reason for them to give up the supply. And we are at the next EMC. We're actually having one of the big promoters of re-regulation, a company called Power for Tomorrow, come to EMC to tell everybody, coming to the Lions Den, to tell everybody what they're telling the industry, what they're telling lawmakers, what they're telling the public about how consumers don't benefit from consumer choice, and it's going to be something special. That's the EMC coming up in October of 20 this month, October 27th, 28th of 2025. And that should be very educational for a lot of suppliers. They just can't believe that the common sense just goes out the wind with this kind of thing. So they're going to learn a lot from that. And then the second point I wanted to ask you was, do you think that when it comes to the big guys, like it's almost like the accounting world had this big six for many years, to Touche Ross or Deloitte and Touche or whatever,
Yeah.
those big accountants, and even the big giant M&A firms, the Goldman Sachs of the world. So it seems as if that's what's happening in the retail energy space. There's a top, call it eight, let's say, led by, let's say, the likes of Constellation and NG and NRG that own Direct. And do you feel like the small to mid-sized guys have any way to compete with the big guys? And that leads me to my next question, which is, who are the biggest innovators and what's happening on an innovation in the innovation as you see it?
The answer is yes. People entrepreneurs can have an idea about how to do a better job in the retail energy industry and get a customer base from it and make their company valuable and have positive cash flow. Yes, you can do that. Um, you don't have to have huge innovation to be able to grab a customer base and have a loyal customer base and a very happy customer base. As it relates to innovation, the companies that are innovating and what those innovations are, I don't see those big guys like the NRGs, the Constellations. I don't see them having a lot of success in the innovative space. And companies that large, it's really hard to innovate. The smaller companies are going to be the innovators. Um, this is an important subject to me, so I'll ramble a bit about this. In the case, I'm going to put innovation into two categories. The first category will be a bit more of the mundane category. Won't be really super special. It won't be stuff you write home about, and it is what I call micro improvements. At Hudson, when we started, we had a picture that we wanted to do some software that interfaced with brokers, and we called it the portal and auto pricing. And it was extremely innovative, but in reality, it was a business process improvement. Our margins increased a bit because the brokers they could in 20 seconds do a contract with us. They could get real-time pricing where a company would take a day to get new pricing after the market change. We could do it in 45 seconds because our servers, we put everything on servers and we grew that technically. That's a business process improvement. There are many companies that are doing that now. The company that I'm involved with, Atlantic Energy, has done a really great job of doing that. We have increased our throughput capability and improved our efficiency. Another company I'm involved with, CG Infinity, are experts at developing technology that can enhance a sales position for a company. So these things are happening all the time. I don't want to quite frankly, I don't work in the industry moment in and moment out. I'm semi-retired and but everybody is trying to do this, trying to make sales better. But then the second bucket or category that I will talk about, let me call it macro innovation. Um, and and it takes some background explanation. We think about what the price of electricity is in Texas or in New York or any other place based on what fixed price, fixed term, 12-month contracts are, and that's really not the real price of the energy. If you remember the company Griddy that
Sure.
fell apart with Superstorm Uri,
Yep.
they passed along real-time grid prices. Those prices change every 5 minutes or every 15 minutes, depending upon what whether you're in ERCOT or in PJM. And that is the real price of energy. Companies like ours, we buy that over a long period of time in advance buying, put a lot of risk premiums in it, and manage giving the customer a fixed term, fixed price. But the grid price, the real time price, sometimes goes three or four or five times what the price is that we're paying on your energy on your fixed price. But guess what? Sometimes it goes to zero or even a negative number. People say, how can it go negative? Well, power plants want to keep running, and it's because it's really expensive to start them up again. You have to clean lots of stuff, and it's very hard to do. So they'll pay you to keep using their energy, even when the market doesn't give them a return for it. So so the real-time price of it, the future innovation will be in the arbitrage between that high price at certain points in the day or certain points in the week or the month or the season, and the low prices in the off-peak times. So my picture of the real innovation in the future will be a company or a home that has multiple sources of production, whether that would be the grid, whether it be photovoltaic, whether it would be an on-site generator, all of those things, and you would have the computer on a real-time basis determine whether to crank up the generator, whether to fill the batteries up because the price is really low, and whether to use the photovoltaic and to forecast what the cloud cover is going to be and all that stuff. The price of energy will drop significantly for that person or that company that's doing that. So it's that arbitrage between, so if you can charge up the batteries without photovoltaic, without any of the other sources, charge up the batteries when now you're going to play the TDSP charge full. But if the energy charge is zero, you're charging up your batteries for a half or a third of what you would normally be paying. And then you can sell that back to the utility during the peak times, during the expensive times. So that arbitrage is, to me, the number one long-term source of innovation in this industry. You will see that there is a company that just made Energy Choice Matters because they just did a debt raise base. Good guys. It is extremely capital intensive, so it's a very different business than I've built before. And they do that on the residential space. There's a few things of their models that I don't personally like. If you look at this from a non-residential perspective, a commercial, there's a company called Branch Energy that's trying to do something
Yeah,
very
yeah,
similar.
yeah,
But again, these are a little different than the traditional retail energy
yeah,
industry, and they're
yeah.
trying to tap into that huge arbitrage of cost. And by the way, once we advance the clock 5 years or 10 years and we have a bunch of those companies and a bunch of those customers, it will flatten out the price of that real-time power.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so there is a window of opportunity here where customers can benefit dramatically from that. But that window will ultimately disappear as more and more customers start taking advantage of it.
I'm happy you mentioned those two firms that you mentioned, Base Power and Branch. At EMC we have this Leadership and Integrity Award that we give out every year, and I think they're both nominees this year because of the kind of innovations that they've been doing. And it's just again not to beat a dead horse about this, but imagine if the whole country goes back 20 years and 25 years and it's completely re-regulated, there'd be zero innovation. I mean, there's absolutely no incentive whatsoever for a utility to do anything like this, raise capital, take risks, put generators in people's garages and hook it up with the solar panels and all these things to try to separate themselves. There was another company, I forgot the name of it, that they came to my office to actually give me a pitch. And they came to my conference once or twice, and their whole goal was to literally take the houses completely off the grid using generators, batteries, and solar. I don't know if
Yep.
they've succeeded or not. They were starting in New Jersey. I said, I have a house in Jersey. Go ahead. You could take my house as one of the trials. I'd love to get away from JCP&L. I'd do anything to disconnect. So I don't know how far that went. It doesn't really matter. What matters most is that, like exactly what you said, is that the innovators are not going to be the biggest companies in the world. They're going to be the guys that are nimble, that know how to take calculated risks and could raise money to do that. And you're not going to make money right away doing those kinds of things, but over time, that's where the future is. I totally agree with you. Um, all right, so now I mean, we don't have much more time, but let's just talk about tell me what other maybe interesting services, products, or bundles you're seeing being sold out there, and other opportunities that people should jump into?
Yeah, to me, there's not there are some small things. If we take advantage of those two companies that you mentioned, and if they're successful, there'll be more tag alongers that'll want to have a little variation to that. To me, over the next 5 years, that's where everybody who's really interested in what the future is going to be like in this industry's focus is going to be. You will see little changes. Heck, at Atlantic, we sent bulbs and cameras and stuff to our customers to get loyalty. You're going to see lots of those kinds of things. We have that. We have some new stuff that our customers will really like and they swear by. But you will see those. Those are going to be hard to predict, and they won't be gigantic. I think all of our focus needs to be on that arbitrage with the batteries, the multiple sources of local generation. I hated to see, we talk about the big guys. I hated to see after the debacle by Gritty, I hated to see that the traditional legislative approach was let's make this never happen again. So let's take away Daryl's ability to get power just from the grid
Right,
and do it to my house. Well, there's a workaround in Texas. That was a Texas legislature
right, right,
decision, by the way.
right, right.
And to restrict competition in any way is not a good thing. This the I It's harder now for me to do a DIY kind of a arbitrage of that. It makes it harder. I have to get my house declared commercial through Encore or CenterPoint, and then that makes it a little bit harder. For example, I'm thinking about doing exactly what I talked about out at the ranch. At Donna's ranch, we have my ranch that Donna keeps her horses at. We have several different meters, and I wanted to declare that commercial and to put that multiple source of just to kind of track how low I can keep my power per kilowatt hour used. And that would be a DIY kind of a bill. If you look onto YouTube, you see some ways to do that.
Mhm.
The legislature and the regulations have made that a little harder, and it is what really should be coming from this deregulation, as we call it.
Got it. Two more really quick ones. Um, Number one, I'll ask them both at the same time. Number one, look, no matter what we do in this industry, there are always going to be bad actors,
Mm.
marketing companies that pay their salespeople commission only, that, fool around, that guarantee things that they shouldn't be guaranteeing, representing, they represent the utility when they go door to door. So what do we do about the bad actors? Because that really does, one bad apple does spoil the whole bunch of companies. That's one question. And then the second question I have is, where do you think what do you think is the next restructured state to
Mm.
go and become deregulated? I don't want to use the word deregulated because there's tons of
Yeah,
regulations, but
yeah.
what do you think the next state will be? In my experience in this space, which is more than 20 years, I haven't seen much movement there. But now I think things are moving in the right direction. So two questions: what do we do about the bad actors, and where do you think we're going next?
All right, in the order that you asked them, there are bad actors. There are bad actors in every industry, by the way. If and there are more bad actors in those industries that are heavily regulated because there is loopholes around the regulation that allows you to do that, and then it's advantage because it's partly regulated. Uh, I I I think that education of the consumer is the best way to keep that from happening. We don't do a very good job as an industry. as I went into semi-retirement, I actually thought about doing a RISA type of an industry association that would get money from the industry itself and use that to educate consumers. Um, I think that the reason that we hear about those so-called bad actors and the 1/10 of 1% that it actually happens is because the monopoly companies want to portray that as an everyday event.
Promote it. They
It,
promote it.
it
Right.
is it is very rare that someone gets hurt because of a bankruptcy or because of something. It does happen, but we need to fix it and educate the consumer and then treat the customer, fix whatever the customer was out, and then move on. We don't need to make a big deal out of it because of somebody else's political, I'll call it political agenda to carry out. On your, what was your
My
second?
last question is where do you think the next state, which
Ah,
state is going to be next to
that
deregulate?
I hate to admit this, I don't know. I thought I knew that it was Florida, and I watched very closely. I'm not sure how closely you watched what happened in Florida with the attempt
Yeah.
and the signatures,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, the political strength of the two or three large monopoly institutions
Well,
there killed that.
Florida Power and Light,
Yes,
what is it, FPL,
yes,
but it's owned by a retail energy company called NextEra. So that's a
yes.
strange thing.
And Nextera is out in Texas competing against people like me
Right. Right.
in the competitive markets while they're doing a lot of strong legislative political advocacy to keep it from happening in their state. And to their credit, they were successful. I
Yeah.
hate that because Floridians are paying the price for that now. Their price of energy
Right.
is higher. If you look, and I've thrown it up on the screen in some EMC meetings, and you says, why doesn't everybody else talk? You said, why don't everybody else talk about this? If you look at the states that have got
Restricted.
competitive retail energy market and those that have not, the price indexing those prices, I feel really bad for monopoly states. They have no
Right.
other choice
Right.
except to pay those exorbitant rates where competition will bring those rates down. And it's hard to see, but I don't have a good handle. I know Arizona did a lot of work in that direction, and Florida did a lot of work in that direction.
Louisiana, I think Louisiana might be the next.
Ah,
We'll see. We'll see. It's going in the
that
right
would be very
direction.
interesting. Right next door
Yeah.
to a very successful market, Texas.
Yep. Exactly.
Even though we
Um,
call Arizona here in our Louisiana here a third world country, it would still be great. That's the
well,
Texans view, by the
well,
way.
I say that about New Jersey. You can't get a
Okay.
plumber. You can't get a plumber. You can't get an electrician. They don't. They'll call me next week. Call me back next week. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time. This is really great, and it was short, brief, and concise, I think is very educational as well. And
Good.
it really was an honor to have you on the show and to inaugurate the first episode of the EMC, Energy Insider podcast. So Daryl, thank you so much, and for your
You
time.
are so welcome, my friend. You know what? We didn't talk about what Jack does in this industry, and I am really appreciative of that. And we need to enumerate that in a future podcast.
Okay, we'll talk about that in the future. Take it easy. Have a great day. Thank you so
Thank
much.